Who is the greatest rookie goalie ever to make it all the way to the Stanley Cup Finals? Today we're going to take a look at the top 5 and discuss who might be the greatest of all time. Of course, this list includes current Blues goalie Jordan Binnington, who has an opportunity to become a Stanley Cup champion. We'll get into all that coming up next. Welcome back to Top Shelf Hockey. If you're new to the channel, thanks for stopping by. We review and discuss all 31 NHL teams, so if you're a huge hockey fan, consider subscribing and clicking the bell so you don't miss anything. So who is the greatest rookie goalie to ever make it to the Stanley Cup Finals? It's not something we see very often, that a rookie goalie leads his team all the way to the Stanley Cup Finals, especially ones who even go on further to become Stanley Cup champions. Today I want to take a look at the top 5 goalies to accomplish this, including current Blues goalie Jordan Binnington, who has his team one win away from winning the elusive Stanley Cup here. Let's take a look at the top 5, and you can leave your comments and discussion in the comments. Let me know who you think is the greatest rookie goalie of all time to make it to the finals. First up, we got Patrick Roy of the Montreal Canadiens during the 1985-86 season. He was 20 years old at the time. He went through the regular season with a record of 23-18-3, an .875 save percentage, and a 3.36 goals against average. Now, of course, those numbers don't seem awfully flattering, but also keep in mind that at that point in the NHL, goal scoring was certainly at a higher level. You saw many players in the top of the league getting a lot more points than they do today, so keep that in mind here. Back then, those numbers, they still weren't fantastic, but they weren't as bad as they might seem. Even though they had some more experienced goalies on the Habs roster who they could have gone to in the playoffs, like Steve Penny and Bogart as well, they elected to go with the youngster Patrick Roy, who led his team with a 15-5 record through to the Stanley Cup. He had a .923 save percentage and a very stingy 1.93 goals against average. He won 8 games that were 1-goal games, which was an incredible accomplishment. Goes to show that, as we've seen here many times throughout the playoffs, you need your goalie to make the big saves, keep your team in it, and just give them a chance to win. That's the main goal. That's the main job of the goaltender, is just to keep giving our team an opportunity. He did just that, and oftentimes the Habs responded here and gave them just enough run support to get the W. Now, also, he came out clutch in overtime throughout those playoffs, where he had a 3-1 record. Obviously, they had 4 overtime games, and won 3 out of 4, so obviously that was a big accomplishment as well. And he went on to be the Conn Smythe Trophy winner as playoffs MVP, so it was quite an accomplishment for a very young Patrick Roy. As we know, he went on to have quite an incredible career, arguably the greatest goaltender of all time. He's certainly in that conversation, at least. Obviously, Hall of Famer, quite the goaltender career. So for Patrick Roy, and that's where it all got started, was an incredible playoff run with the Habs back in '86. The following season, we had Ron Hextall through the 86-87 regular season. He was a rookie goaltender, 22 years old at the time, posted a record of 37-21-6 with a .902 save percentage and a .301 goals against average. Now, the one difference here from Hextall to Patrick Roy before him in the year before is that Hextall was basically the starter all throughout the year. He certainly played in a higher percentage of the team's games, so it was a little bit more of a guarantee that he would be the goaltender they would go to when it came time here for the playoffs. He obviously had a tremendous showing in the playoffs, but unfortunately his team did not win the Stanley Cup. They had an excellent showing, making their way all the way to the finals, where they ran into the high-powered Edmonton Oilers, but he finished with a record of 15-11, a .908 save percentage, and a 2.76 goals against. So obviously he played a lot more games than Patrick Roy did the year before. Obviously, the Flyers series certainly went longer than the Montreal ones did. The Habs were able to wrap up their series in shorter fashion there. Obviously, he lost in Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Finals to those high-powered Oilers. But given the stats that he put up, playing 7 games against those high-powered teams, including guys like Wayne Gretzky, Mark Messier, Yeri Curry, Paul Coffey, Glenn Anderson, etc., that team was an absolute powerhouse and set many NHL records for scoring goals and putting up lots of points. So the fact that he held them the way he did and gave his team a shot to win all the way to Game 7 was certainly an incredible feat, and something that you don't see very often. Ron Hextall went on to win the Conn Smythe Trophy, even though he was on the losing team in the Stanley Cup Finals. Next up, we have Cam Ward of the Carolina Hurricanes, who during his incredible run back in 2006 was 21 years of age. During the 05-06 season, Ward was the backup goaltender to Martin Gerber for the Carolina Hurricanes. Finished the season with a 14-8-2 record, an .882 save percentage, and a 3.68 goals against average. So obviously, for a a rookie goalie, not incredible numbers. But of course, when the playoffs started, the Carolina Hurricanes went to their starting goaltender, Martin Gerber, to start Game 1. And later in Game 2 is when he first got pulled and they went to Cam Ward. And he basically took over from there. Ward took over, went on an incredible run, putting up a 15-8 record, a .920 save percentage, and a really stingy 2.14 goals against average. He put up 2 shutouts along the way and went on to help lead the Carolina Hurricanes all the way to the Stanley Cup Finals and win the Stanley Cup. Of course, he went on to also be named the Conn Smythe Trophy winner for playoffs MVP. Cam Ward went on an incredible run there. Basically became the starter from that point on, and obviously was the Carolina Hurricanes starting goaltender for quite some time. I don't think it's fair to say he went on to have quite the career like we can say about Patrick Waugh or even Ron Hextall. Both those goalies were certainly incredible in their days. Ward was certainly really solid for the Hurricanes, but doesn't quite have the complete resume that those guys do. But Ward certainly made a name for himself, burst onto the scene, and ended up being the starting goalie for a number of years there for the Hurricanes. Now, next up, we saw this again happen in 2016 for the Pittsburgh Penguins when 21-year-old Matt Murray came on to take over for the playoffs and lead his team all the way to victory here. Now, during the regular season, Murray didn't make a lot of appearances. He had a record of 9-2-1 with a .930 save percentage and a 2.0 goals against average. So, obviously, his stats were very solid, but of course, they also have Marc-Andre Fleury and Jeff Zatkoff on the roster. So, Murray was basically being called upon as the number 3 guy, filling in due to injuries and whatnot. When the playoffs started, Fleury was hurt, so this created an opportunity. The Penguins originally went to Jeff Zatkoff, who was more experienced at the time, to play the first few games, but then eventually Matt Murray had to take over, and the rest, as they say, is history. Throughout the playoffs, Murray went on to put up a 15-6 record and a .923 save percentage and a 2.08 goals against average, which was absolutely incredible. In round 2 against Washington that year, he actually had an incredible series, only giving up 11 goals in 6 games, and he went on to do the exact same thing in the Stanley Cup Finals when they did battle with the San Jose Sharks. So 11 goals in 6 games, less than 2 per game, which is absolutely incredible. As we know, as the playoffs go on, defenses usually do get stronger, and oftentimes that does lead teams to victory here. But Matt Murray went on, obviously, the following year as well to win another back-to-back Stanley Cup here, back-to-back years, and same type of fashion, where in the following year, Fleury obviously was more in the mix, but still Murray ended up being the guy in the net and leading the Penguins here to 16-17 back-to-back Stanley Cup championships, which is not something we see very often anymore. And of course, as we know, that kind of gave the Penguins the ability here to make Murray the main guy moving forward, and allowing Fleury to be exposed to the expansion draft, who was eventually claimed here by the Vegas Golden Knights. And of course, he rejuvenated himself going on to Vegas and making it all the way back to the finals the following year, when Vegas did battle with the Washington Capitals. But Matt Murray certainly burst onto the scene with an incredible Stanley Cup victory in his first season as a rookie. And after not playing very much in the regular season, if you take a look back at the other goalies that we've already discussed here, Patrick Waugh and Ron Hextall were certainly regulars throughout the whole year. Cam Ward was more of a backup and appeared in about 24 games. Matt Murray had even less. I mean, Matt Murray only got into 12 games throughout the regular season. So far as regular season play going into the playoffs, Matt Murray was definitely the least experienced heading into the playoffs, and therefore you would think at least the least likely to be able to put up this type of performance. But of course, he pulled through in dramatic fashion. Now, of course, like some of these other guys, Matt Murray did not win the Conn Smythe Trophy. Sidney Crosby was granted that. Of course, there were many guys on the Penguins who had phenomenal playoff runs. But overall, Murray certainly in contention here, one of the more recent guys to get this done before we're seeing what happened here this year. Now, of course, that leads us to present day with Jordan Binnington and the St. Louis Blues. Now, the one difference about Jordan Binnington, he's a little bit older. He's 25 years old. He started the year being looked upon as likely the number 4 goalie on the depth chart here for the Blues. Of course, they started the year with Johnson and Jake Allen as the main 2 guys at the NHL level. Then, of course, you had Binnington and Ville Husso at the American Hockey League level. It was only 1 year ago before this that he wasn't even making a spot on his American Hockey League roster. They wanted to send him to the East Coast League, which he did not want to do. They ended up being able to accommodate him and loaned him to play for the Providence Bruins. The Bruins took him on to play with their American Hockey League team, since they didn't have as many goaltenders in their system to fill those spots, and it worked out quite nicely. He got a lot of great experience here. So therefore, that kind of makes it a little bit funny here how they're playing the Bruins now in the Stanley Cup Finals. they can certainly take a little bit of credit for kind of helping his progress along here for sure. But at 25 years old, he's the oldest out of all these goalies to make this type of accomplishment. He came into the NHL in January when the Blues were dead last in the NHL, made his first appearance on January the 7th, is when he had his first start. He went all the way to the end of the year, playing in the bulk of the games from that point forward, with a record of 24-5-1, finished with a .927 save percentage and a 1.89 goals against average, which is absolutely incredible. Throughout the playoffs, he's got a 15-9 record so far, looking for win number 16, which hasn't happened yet. So as I record this video, the Blues and Bruins are getting ready to play Game 6 tonight. So I guess we'll see if he becomes Stanley Cup champion or not. But I wanted to get this video up for discussion here so we could debate this before the game this evening. He has a .913 save percentage, a 2.46 goals against average in these playoffs, and 1 shutout to his name so far. So given everything that we talked about here with all of these goaltenders, they all kind of had different situations, different number of games played heading into the year, therefore different experience levels. Mostly, for the most part, they're all pretty early in their career, anywhere from 20 to 22 years old. But Binnington's older, he didn't even start the year in the NHL. So that's one thing with him and Matt Murray kind of have in common here, is the lack of playing time heading into the playoffs. But in the second half of the year, he got more playing time than Murray did. So certainly is something to keep in mind as well. But is Jordan Binnington one of the greatest, or is he the greatest story of rookie goalies making it all the way to the Stanley Cup Finals? Or do you think one of the other 4 guys who have made it before him is the greatest story of all time? So you get Patrick Waugh, Ron Hextall, Cam Ward, Matt Murray, and Jordan Binnington. Who is the greatest story in a rookie goalies making it to the Stanley Cup Finals of all time? Let me know your thoughts and comments down below, and we will continue the discussion here on who is the greatest. If you're new to the channel, I hope you consider subscribing. We cover all 31 NHL teams, and there is plenty of content here for all hockey fans to enjoy. So if you're new, subscribe for more content just like this one, and give the video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it as well. I'd appreciate it if you did. As always, thank you for watching, and I will catch you next time.